Here we are again for another great episode of the HawkCast. We have an absolute living legend with us tonight. The man from the greatest high school that has ever lived on the face of this earth, Centerville High School, Mr. Kirk Herbstreit. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, it's great to be with you, my man.
Yeah, I referenced Centerville High School for people that don't know. I know you've referenced it on Game Day. You've referenced it all over the place, and I love it because what people probably don't know is that you and I both come from the great program over at down in Ohio, the Centerville Elks. Coach Bob Gregg, Ron Ulrey, everybody there. We that was our upbringing. So I would say you talk about Centerville a lot. Do you still feel like you have a ton of pride in that program? And what was it there? What was it about Centerville that gave you that makes that stick with you?
I think anybody who went through that program had to work and probably learned a lot about themselves. I mean, AJ, you were a superstar from the very beginning. I mean, going back to your sophomore year, you had an older brother on the team. You kind of knew what it took. But for those of us that didn't have an older brother, that sophomore year honestly changed my life because I thought I knew what hard work was. But when you get up at 5 a.m. and it's still dark out, and you get through it, and your guys are throwing up on each other in the Nautilus room, and you somehow persevere through that. The heat of June and July, and the sun, the running that they do. Centerville was so far ahead of the rest of the country, even in college or pro, as far as outworking your opponent. And I don't know. I just think when you get through it, and you're kind of a mid-level talent team, and you just outwork people and beat them on attitude, I think it just teaches you so much. So the reason I talk so often about Centerville, and I go back as often as I can to help promote their school, is because of what it did for me personally and the relationships that I built. I'm a huge high school football fan, and I just think that's an age where kids are very vulnerable, and they could sway one way or another. And I just feel very fortunate that I had Bob Gregg and Ron Ulrey and those guys in my life, because they saved my life. They changed my life completely.
It's crazy to think, and anyone that didn't go to Centerville will be probably annoyed that we're talking about it. But that's me and you always joke about it when we're out in public.
Yeah.
We talk about Centerville, and we start telling old Centerville war stories, and our wives and friends that we're with that didn't go to Centerville. Luckily, there's still a few of them hanging out, around that are Centerville guys with you and with me at times, and they get annoyed with it. But yeah, it's something about it. It's almost like a weird. I can't speak for military guys because I wasn't a military person. I'm not trying to compare football to that, but it's like this crazy bond that you get with those guys, even if you didn't I didn't play with you in high school, but we all know know that crazy the stuff we were doing. It's one of those things.
Whether you go into the NFL, which I think you're one of the few guys that have gone on to play in the NFL yourself, whether you're fortunate enough to be a guy like you, and it doesn't have to be Centerville, it could be any high school program out there. I just think that it creates a foundation for you when you learn some of the things that we learned about. Again, perseverance, hard work, dedication, all these things that you probably have buddies that you played football with in high school that didn't even play college football, but went on to become very successful in whatever they happen to get into. I love those guys, and I'm just as proud of those guys as I am a guy like you or I with all the notoriety. To me, the backbone of those kind of programs, whether it's high school football, whatever it happens to be, are the things that you learned and how it affected you and how it changed you. And you probably can name a bunch of guys that you played with that didn't play a down of college football, didn't even go to college to play football, yet they learned just as much as you and I did, and they got just as much of it out of it as we did. And I think that's why I just love that program so much, and that's why I'm so proud of what they do and the kind of young men that they turn out.
And segueing from there, seems like you were making all the right moves. Then, bam, you go to another great school in Ohio State, and it's just like, man, what a weird path both of us are on. It happened to both go to Centerville, both go to Ohio State, and playing quarterback there, and everyone obviously sees you on TV now, and I think I'm sure you're. I would say it as an absolute compliment that you're known as a broadcaster. You're known as an analyst
Yep.
and a one of the best there is. And is that how you would look at yourself now as a broadcaster? But the thing is, you're an athlete and you played quarterback in Division I at Ohio State. I mean, it doesn't get any bigger than that in college. So you ever have to remind people that you did play the game?
I don't, but it's been so long since that era of my life, and I am so proud of when I look back at those years at Ohio State of how it ended, because I came in highly touted. It was me and a quarterback named Todd Marinovich, the quarterback from USC, that had a lot of obviously personal problems, but he and I were kind of like back then they just had a parade All-American, and he was the West Coast quarterback and I was kind of the East Coast quarterback, and I went to Ohio State and he went to USC. So I was expected to, like, you know how it goes with recruiting, step in, start for 4 years, win 4 Rose Bowls, that kind of thing. And it blew up on me. My first couple of years, it didn't work out. I came out of Centerville running the wishbone, struggled trying to become a comfortable pocket quarterback. And it took 3 years for me to really just kind of get my feet on the ground. I thought about moving over to safety. I covered kickoffs. I wanted to do anything to get on the field. And at one point, I was ready to shut it down. I was ready to go on, maybe pursue baseball, which was probably my first love. And I didn't. My dad said, just kind of keep pushing. And I got through my junior year, and the guy that I was going up against, I kind of felt personally that I outcompeted him in practice, and just based on the numbers that they kept in practice and things. And my junior year didn't fall my way. So my senior year, going into it, the players voted back then. I don't know if they still do it. The players in the spring ball voted for the captains for the following year, and they voted unanimously for myself and a guy named Steve Tovar to be the captains of the team. And to think about where I was 2 or 3 years earlier, and now to be voted unanimously team captain by my teammates, even though I only had a chance to put it all together in 1 year. It was really because of that roller coaster ride of starting up here, then going way down, and then coming back to the top. I really ended with great memories, of my time at Ohio State, and I'm just so grateful and thankful that I stuck it out, and thankful for the time that I had there. But that was back in 1992. I mean, it's been so long, and I've been at ESPN now. This will be my 20th year, I think, coming up this fall, which is crazy. Yeah. And, I think now outside of Ohio and outside of Columbus, I'm just looked at as a college football analyst on ESPN or ABC. And I think for Ohio State fans, I'm still looked at, obviously, as a former Ohio State quarterback and former Ohio State player.
You're always a Buckeye, man. That's one thing. They love their guys, especially quarterbacks. That just made me think about, like, it's got to be crazy. And I referenced this a couple weeks ago with you when I was talking when we weren't recording, but something about it's got to be so hard to play both sides. So you're the color analyst for the biggest game in the country every single week of college football. You have the number one job in football right now, at college level, whatever, And so how do you not? I mean, obviously you can never please everybody, but does it get annoying that every team probably thinks you're? I talked to Joe Buck on here, and same thing. He said every team thinks I hate their team.
Yeah,
and he's like, I don't care what happens. He's like, I can't be a homer. It doesn't matter to me. And so, how do you handle that? How has that gone from when you first started there to now? How has that kind of progressed?
It's a great question, and it's probably the biggest obstacle and challenge I've had, because just to be candid, I'm a pleaser by nature. I just, whether it was when I was a boy and I wanted to please my parents, I wanted to please my teachers, I wanted to please my coach. It's just, I can't change that. I want people to approve of who I am and what I'm trying to do. And so when you think about, I have a job to do at the end of the day. I love Ohio State, more than anybody you'll ever meet. I mean, I was a kid that knew the fight song when I was age 5. You know, you walk in as a freshman, they hand you the fight song. I'm like, do you want me to teach the guys? Like, I got it. You know, honestly, I would challenge anybody in the last 30 years that have gone to Ohio State that's been a bigger Ohio State fan to me than I was when I went to go play at Ohio State, and still feel the exact same way about the school. So when people characterize you in a certain way, or they misrepresent who you are, because right now I'm wearing a blue shirt, so I hate Ohio State.
And I got a red shirt on too. Look at that. Oh, God.
But I mean, that's the logic that you're dealing with. You know, he's wearing a blue shirt, so clearly he hates Ohio State. So at some point, you just have to realize the same fans that boo you guys if you lose 3 or 4 games straight in Green Bay, and you come back and let's say Aaron Rodgers is struggling. He's throwing, for whatever reason, he's throwing a lot of picks, and he's getting old, and another guy, maybe he's better behind him. And he comes out and he throws a pick to start the game. Those people that boo him, I mean, that's the fraction of people that I think reach out to me to let me know that I'm a turncoat or whatever it is. I mean, and again, when you go back to who I am, the heart and soul who I am inside, it bothers me as much as I try to not let it bother me, because it's not true. And so, for me, if you've watched me, AJ, whether it was 1996 when I first started to this year, or to when you played, I analyze the game, and I can't see scarlet and gray and every other team. I see teams. When you played, I saw number 47 making plays, and I would talk about number 47 making plays. If I watched a Michigan linebacker making plays, I talked about a Michigan linebacker making plays, or a Michigan quarterback, or a Florida State quarterback. I see teams and players when I'm in the booth. Now, when I'm at home with my wife and my kids, their faces are painted, and we are the biggest diehard Ohio State fans, most passionate. That's the way you were going to raise your kids. That's the way I raised mine. So, but when I'm on the air, and when you get into this business, if you got into, I don't know if you're going to eventually become a pro analyst or college, but if you're a college analyst,
whoever wants to give me a job, Kirk, whoever wants to hire me.
It'd be interesting to see when you do a Packer game or when you do a Buckeyes game. Are you going to say we, when you do the game? Or are you going to kind of just try to talk about it and be fair? And as a fan, when Jay Billis talks about college basketball, I personally find it refreshing that when he talks about Duke like you didn't know he went to Duke. He's just evaluating and analyzing Duke. Whether he's talking about North Carolina or Duke, it's the same analysis. And I really value that when I watch guys like Jay Billis or anybody else out there.
I think you hit on something when you said, as much as it shouldn't bother us, or we don't want it to bother us. You said it does because it's not true, and I think that's the key right there. You said It's not true, and it's true. If someone's sitting there, and everyone knows, especially with technology and all this stuff, you're not going to sit there and hide in your basement all day. You're going to see stuff and hear stuff from people. So if an idiot wants to say things that are, or just say you suck, you're no good, whatever. Okay, I know that's not getting under your skin. That's not bothering you just because it's just talk and whatever. But when someone says, you're a turncoat, or you forgot who you are, or whatever, I have no idea what people say to you. But I know tiny things that I have gotten said to myself when I have just when you say anything, if someone will ask me, well, what do you think about the Buckeyes this week? I'm like, it's going to be a big test. And they're like, what are you talking about? We're going to beat them by 40. I was like, I'm sorry, man. Like, the other teams are good. These guys are on scholarship too,
Yeah, AJ, it's funny you say that. It's like we live in an era right now where if Ohio State loses, or any team, we're talking about Ohio State, but this goes for any team. If Clemson beats Ohio State in a bowl game, by the way, a really, really talented Clemson team, it's not, wow, man, they're good. Man, Sammy Watkins and Taj Boyd, that's a good team. It's, Urban blew the call in the third quarter. The ref was terrible. I don't know what Braxton was thinking. He turned the ball over down. That's what it is. It's like, why can't we just say we lost? And by the way, that's for Packer fans, not just Ohio. It's fans today in general. That's just, they have a hard time. And I honestly contributed to the internet. I contributed to the chat rooms, the nonsense that's thrown back and forth from one fan base to another. I mean, by the time a game is played, these people in these chat rooms, their life is on the line. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, their life is on the line in a game. And when they lose, they got to get back in that chat room and get, you know what, in that chat room. And they take it out on you as a player or me or whoever. Mm-hmm. So the whole thing, you just have to, I've gotten kind of callous to it. I've gotten a lot better, but it's still, we're human beings.
Us as fans of football, and college football fans are absolutely rabid. Look at the set of Game Day every weekend. We know you as the guy wearing a suit, sitting on a desk talking, and we know you as the guy that's coming to us live in our living rooms. Usually the primetime game, or always the primetime game, but a lot of times the night game on Saturday night, and the crazy atmosphere, and the guy that's going to analyze the game. We don't know you, how you really feel. We just know you as a true pro. So it's got to be tough for people to separate that. I have a hard time separating that when I watch other sports and other people. I don't know guys. There's a lot of guys in the NFL I don't know personally, but because I'm a human, I catch myself sometimes like developing, not judging, but thinking I know a guy, and then you meet him, you're like, man, this guy's legit. He's a great dude. Why am I don't care what I've heard about him or what supposedly if he's not a team guy, and then you talk to his teammates and you find out, oh, he's the best guy you can have. So it's got to be one of those things, I think, where people, I think at some point people are going to, the majority of people are coming around to, like you said, not just sticking it to somebody. Like if someone loses a game, say Ohio State loses a game, instead of saying all the mistakes and how poorly they did, and coaches, you can say, you know what, they got beat by a really good team,
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll get there. But there's always a few fringe people.
Yeah, and that's the thing you have to keep in mind. And the reason I've learned not to take it personally is this is the same era that Craig Krenzel led you guys in 2002 to a national championship. And in 2003, you guys go to Ann Arbor, and if you remember your sophomore year, he gets dinged up in that game when you guys are down pretty decent margin.
Yep. And
Scott McMullen, I think, was the quarterback who brought him back, and he got it within 7. And then it came, and you guys made a stop, and it was, I think, 35-28, I want to say. And Coach Tressel had to make a decision. Does he go back to the guy that got him the national title and Craig Krenzel, or does he go with the hot hand who led him back in the game, Scott McMullen? And he goes to Craig Krenzel, and the crowd, Ohio State fans were booing that Craig Krenzel was going back into the game. William Buford, who was a great three-point shooter, had a great career at Ohio State, got hate mail, on his school email account because he missed some big threes at the end of a game. The list goes on and on. You played with guys. I think Ryan Hamby got some emails,
yes,
for a drop against Texas. So it's like, it's just, I don't think it's personal towards any of us. I just think that these fans thankfully care so much. They're so passionate, which is awesome for the sport. But sometimes I think people, they forget that these are human beings that they're talking to. And sometimes I think people go overboard, and they think they know, but they really have no clue when it comes to evaluating you, AJ, as a person, or me as a person, or whoever as a person. Imagine getting so mad to send William Buford, hate mail to his school email account after the 4-year. He was a 4-year starter, a great player.
A stud, yeah.
So I can't get my mind wrapped around that. And so when you think about it, and again, this is not about Ohio State. You and I are just talking about Ohio State. This is all schools and all professional teams. And so it's not personal towards any of us. It's just the fans care.
They do care, yeah. I think it's honestly just a small percentage. I know I've seen you've said that before. Yeah. It's a small percentage that kind of ruins it for the mass, and that's just kind of how things go. And when you said so moving on to like your broadcasting thing, I want to get back to really how you got into ESPN. But before I get into that, I wanted to ask you something that I've noticed now that I've paid attention to broadcasting. I'd say more over the last 2 years. I think you guys and what you do are taken for granted so much with the information you guys give out. And I was guilty of this before too, before I paid attention. We think you just show up to the game and you're just like, oh, hey, I'm just talking football just like we are in our living room, and just, oh, hey, yeah, number 21, he ran a 4.340. He's got great speed and he's an all-around talent. Like, that's what I think people think. And so can you just walk us through maybe a little bit of a week of preparation for you leading up to, say one of your games on Saturday?
Yeah, and again, now that you're doing this, it's funny how you watch things differently. I mean, you'll watch all the shows. You can watch PTI differently. You'll watch Sports Center differently. You'll watch a game broadcast differently now that you're kind of paying attention. And I'm not blowing it out of proportion, but I literally, for 4 months, if I'm awake and I'm not with my family, I'm doing something to prepare for the upcoming week. I've been so fortunate that my lifeline, the players, the current college football players, and the coaches. And I've built a rapport and a relationship up with almost all of them, where if I call them, they know they can trust me. They know that I'm just talking, about football. I'm going to use, like, I remember talking to you when you guys were getting ready to play games. And I would talk to you about the game, and you might give me a thought or two. And I would never say, AJ Hawk says this, and that. I might use the information that you provided me, and I might use that as background information. But I would never, unless you wanted me to, I would never say, AJ Hawk says this. It would really almost validate what I already looked at on film or what I already felt. Because at the end of the day, I have to have my own opinions based on watching film, because a lot of players are taught to have kind of Bull Durham quotes or kind of say the right thing. So you have to, some players,
you got to be cliche. You're right. You got to give what they want.
It's cliche driven, and but I watch so much film. You'd think I'm playing on Saturday. I watch film. I talk to coordinators on both sides. I mean, by the time I go into a booth to call a game, I feel like there's nobody who knows more about this game than me, including the coaches, because I am a sponge to the offensive and defensive coordinator for, let's say it's Florida State, and I know everything, and they're very forthcoming. They tell me it all. And then Auburn, they're going to give me all of what they know, what they think of the keys. So I'm like in both meeting rooms the day before the game, getting all of the latest information. And so it really puts me in a position where when I call a game, I know my own thoughts, but I also know the thoughts of the decision makers for both games. And it puts you in a position of really almost authority, and it gives you a great deal of confidence when you go out there to call a 3.5, 4 hour broadcast, especially in college football where, it's that hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. But I just feel like going back to Centerville, I've always believed in, I'm not a superstar, never will be. So I just have to outwork my opponent. And that's the way I've always been from the first day. And that's how I am today. And that's how I'll be till I'm done doing this.
And you when you talked about, texting and calling coaches and everything, would you say every week for one of your games, I'm sure you're calling coaches, texting coaches. Are you allowed? Oh yeah, you can do whatever you want, but are you texting and calling players as well?
Yeah. A lot of times I will. I'll build up a relationship with players on teams that are in the top 10 or 15. And if they're comfortable in that role, then I'll have dialogue with them. And if not, then I won't. It's not that. That's more of kind of icing on the cake for me. My main resources are the coaches and the game film, being able to evaluate film and look at tendencies. And then the big thing, which is crazy, is when game day, the studio show that I do, when that show goes off at noon, we get to our bus, our Home Depot bus, and we have 5 TVs set up, and I watch 5 games at noon and 5 games at 3:30. And then when I go in to call my game at 8 o'clock, I've TiVo'd games back home. So when I get back, if I missed another primetime game other than the one I called, I'll watch, a couple of those games. And then there's always the 10:30 or 11 o'clock Pac-12 game, and I'll watch those games. So you really, really have to love college football to do this, and I think do it well, because for me, for whatever reason, with that sport, not so much the NFL, but with college football, I can watch any game over and over and over and over and enjoy it. And I think it helps prepare me without me even knowing that it's preparing me.
And when you watch film during the week leading up to a game, how do you, like, just logistically, how do you watch it? Like on laptop, iPad?
They gave us recently have given us a new app that allows us to just put it right into our iPad. And so we get coaches quality, both tight and wide angles. So, I mean, I can, by Sunday night, I've got the film that I need to be able to evaluate, Michigan State's playing Michigan. I can look, laying in bed, I can sit there and watch Michigan State the last 2 or 3 weeks, or I can watch Michigan or whoever it happens to be. And before that, we would just try to get to the campus. I leave on Thursday. And, a lot of times you'll go over to the facility, wherever you happen to be, and you go into their, you'll go to practice, and either before practice or after practice, you just ask the film guy if you can get into a room and watch film. And, again, it's an extension of really being a player for me, and looking at the film and watching it. It really helps you to not kind of pick up tendencies, but just kind of pick up on strengths and weaknesses of certain players and certain units within that team.
So you get there Thursday for a Saturday game. You go to practice. You mentioned that you go watch practice. Then I'm assuming you have production meetings with both team,
Yeah.
probably both coaches and some players, selected players, and just kind of pick their brain. And then so when I got the chance to listen to Dick Vermeil speak, a great coach who was known for being one of the most overly prepared TV guys ever. Like, just he showed us this cards that he would make for games, and they're just ridiculous. Just so much information. He has all his little keys for what he's doing, and he said a big. What's that?
Who was that?
Dick Vermeil.
Oh yeah,
coach, yeah.
Yep.
And so he said, but he was saying how he's like it's a process. He said it's not just that. He said I watch tons and tons of, he's a coach, of course, that's all they do is watch film. But he said I watch tons and tons of film. But he said if I get to the city on Fridays for a Sunday game, they would get there. He said we're going to dinner Friday night with our whole crew, and I'm sitting there and we're just talking shop the whole time at dinner and hanging out and drinking wine with each other. Then Saturday all day they're getting up, they might work out together and have more production meetings and talk. He said we're just talking about the game and kind of developing rapport the whole time. And is that kind of what you guys have done with Musburger and everybody?
The challenging thing for me, and I think I'm one of the only guys in the country that has to deal with this, is being on a high-profile studio show, and then also the high-profile game. That's been the toughest part for me, because I'm much like Dick Vermeil. I'm a big chemistry guy. I'm big on let's go to dinner. Let's talk about the game. Hey, I've looked at a lot of stuff the last 5 days. Hey, this is what I'm thinking. But my problem is I've got to spend my other half of my week getting ready for game day. And, that's a 3-hour show. And that's a lot of personalities on that show that I've got to, make time for. So I do the best that I can preparing for both and trying to get the dinners with both and trying to accomplish the same thing that Dick Vermeil's talking about. Because whether you're playing football for the Packers or doing this, that's an important thing.
I did realize it, but when I was asking you that question, I didn't think about it, that you are in different places much of the time. So
Some weeks.
So most of the time, though, you'll be doing game day on set, 3 hours, live show, and then you'll be doing a game somewhere else, though. You won't always be doing that game, right?
Yeah. I would say out of the 15 weeks of the regular season, I would say 8 or 9 game day and the game are in the same location. And then the other 6 or 7, what happens typically is, depending on how big the broadcast of the game that I'm calling, I might fly Thursday to the location of the game that I'm calling, do all the stuff I would normally do, go to practice, watch film, do all that. Friday morning, fly to game day, and then just spend all day Friday and Saturday morning with game day. And then right after game day, they would get me on a Disney charter to get me from game day back to the game. And and then you call the game. So there's a lot of moving parts there, and I'd tell you the biggest thing, and you'll find this if you get into this industry, is the producers and the directors and all the guys that are behind the scenes in the truck. Those guys are really not just saying it; they're the key. Because when you have a well-oiled machine and a group of people you really are comfortable with, it allows you to not have to spend maybe as much time making sure everybody's on the same page, because there's a trust factor there. And if you have it, you're in good shape. And if you don't, you're probably going to be in trouble. And juggling both of those, it's a bit of a challenge. Hold on real quick, because my puppy's trying to.
No worries.
Hold on.
You're good. That's a puppy?
Yeah, we just got him. He's
Jeez.
5 months.
I didn't know he was
underneath my desk.
I had no idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Coke just delivered that. Yeah. Hold on. I'll be down in a little bit, guys.
That's awesome.
Jake, I'm interviewing in here. Just be real quiet, okay?
That's awesome.
Okay. Yeah. So it's a very challenging part of doing what I do, because I would love to just call a game. I would love to just have game day and spend time with the guys and, hey, where are we going to dinner? But we do make a point of trying to get to dinner, but it's hard to do. It really is.
Yeah, you're probably the only. You're right. I mean, I guess now with Fowler taking the helm of the play-by-play for Musburger, now both of you guys will be traveling together to those games. How's that transition going to go? Have you called games with him? I don't even know.
I've called a handful of games with him over the last few years. First of all, I mean, I grew up, when I think about this, when I was in high school, I remember Brent Musburger calling games on CBS. And before that, I mean, all the Lakers and Celtics, great games. I mean, you watch any of these 30 for 30 film clips, it seems like Brent's on almost all of them from the 70s and 80s. So when they asked me back in 2006 to join him in the primetime booth, I mean, I was floored that I was going to be standing next to him calling the biggest game of the week on ABC, next to a guy that I'd been listening to for 30 years. And so I did it 8 years with him, and it was an amazing experience, just an opportunity to work with a living legend, just fond memories of working with him. And they brought up that, hey, we're going to move Chris Fowler into that spot. And Chris and I have a great relationship, both on and off the camera. And it's going to be sad on one hand to see Brent go, but I'm looking forward to working with Chris, and it'll be a different kind of energy, different kind of feel as a broadcast. But I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll go well.
Oh, it'll definitely go well. I mean, that's why they pay the guy $1 billion to come in and take that job. I mean, he's one of those guys that you just see. He's like a Tirico, where you see everywhere. And like, what can this guy not do? He's over there calling tennis. It's these guys. A lot of these play-by-play guys, I'm just amazed at how versatile they are. Like Tirico, I remember Tirico does obviously Monday Night Football now, and I think he's one of the best in the business. And I remember him calling, maybe my junior year, we played Marshall, and he was calling that game. So it's amazing how quickly you guys can move up or down the ladder, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, Mike and Chris, I've worked with both of them. We called your Alamo Bowl too against Oklahoma State. I mean, Mike and Chris are, I think, as good as you're going to find on television because of the versatility and the quality of work. I mean, Chris has done everything from Winter X Games to horse racing to not knowing a thing about tennis, and then he sounds like a pro now doing tennis. He does the World Cup. Here's some names from Brazil and Argentina. I mean, he just crushes it. He does. Mike Tirico does golf. He does. He does everything too. So you're right. It's incredible when you really study this business. The guys who are kind of in the host /play-by-play role, those are the guys that really went to school to study broadcasting, to see what they're able to do. I just sit there like in awe. And again, it goes back to, it's kind of like linebackers you played with, and you don't need to name names. There's certain guys that you played with that they just got the right call. The safety always knew what to do. He knew how to fill. It was just, you just trusted what they were doing. And there were other guys you had to worry a little bit about, like, is he going to be there? Oh gosh.
Yep.
And you know the difference? And I'm not saying I've worked with guys that are like that, but I am saying Chris and Mike are guys that they just put it on the tee and you hit it. And they put it on the tee and you hit it. There's never a, whoops, I dropped it. Oh, well, here. It's just consistent. And it makes our job a lot easier.
Have you ever thought of, or have you ever dabbled in doing play-by-play for football games?
You know, I haven't. And I think I enjoy the analysis so much. The only play-by-play I've ever dreamed about is sitting next to Marty Brenneman and calling a Reds game, you know. But because I think the pacing of baseball is a little bit easier than trying to call a college football game. I mean, I don't know how much college football you get a chance to watch. And I know in the NFL we're starting to see now more of this hurry-up stuff. But it's one thing for you to defend it. It's another thing to try to play-by-play guy makes a point. He calls what just happened, and you literally have 8 seconds instead of 20. You have 8 to 10 to try to make an intelligent, relevant point and get out in 8 seconds. I mean, it sounds easy, but when you're trying to give the viewers something that they can kind of hold on to and learn from, and I always look at a game broadcast like you have a blank canvas, and you know how offenses, the first couple series, they're maybe showing you formations and personnel groupings just to kind of see how you're going to react to set up what they're eventually going to try to do to you.
Yeah.
I really look at it like it's my job to tell the audience kind of what's happening and then explain to them throughout the broadcast what the offense is trying to do and how the defense is countering it. So I love the XOs aspect of football.
Believe me, that shows in your in when you call games. And believe me, I'm not just blowing smoke because I'm talking to you. I've known you for a long time. But even like I said, now that I've been paying a lot more attention to you guys, I've noticed, like, my brother will text me Saturday night. I'll be in the hotel before a game and I'll be watching whatever game you're calling. And my brother will be like, he's like, man, you just see that right there, like that little bit of information that Kirk just gave, you know, like 6, 7, 8 seconds you have in between. He's like, nobody else would do that or would know that. When you'll just I can't think of one prime example, but just something about maybe the delivery and how the quarterback had a quicker release on that play, and you've seen him do that 3 weeks ago against Virginia or something, you know, like
right.
You're right. Always coming up with things like that I think are just stored in the back of your brain from all that preparation, and they're just there for you to dial up, you know, when you're on the spot.
It's so funny you say that because that's those kind of comments you can't prepare for. Like you say, it's just, I think they're just in there. And then when you see something, it triggers a thought instantly. But it's not like you can sit there and say, okay, when this happens, this is what I'm going to say. If I give you any advice at all, just getting into this industry, the best advice I could give you is don't memorize or prepare a thought, because what happens is it's no different than when you get up to give a speech. I know you're doing more and more of that. If you try to memorize a speech, you're done.
Yeah. I
mean, you can forget 2 words, and next thing you know, the next paragraph, you're out.
Yeah.
So you're much better off being over-prepared to the point where it's just like, you know it, you know it in your sleep. You're breathing it. You're eating it. It's just all you care about and think about. And then when you get put into that speech or that game, it's amazing the things that come up, that surface up. So as long as you're prepared, it's okay to have a thought or 2 in mind that you want to deliver, but I think you really have to have a ton of information, and you're much better off not necessarily preparing. You've seen guys on TV that look like they're almost reading a teleprompter because they're memorizing their thought, versus a guy that's just kind of talking like you and I are talking right now. Mm-hmm. And I think it's more natural and it's a lot more informative when you can just be loaded up with information and let it fall where it may, as opposed to being overly prepared to a point where it's almost like it's rehearsed. You don't want to be that guy.
It's got to be a fine balance, I would guess, and I think it has to. From when I talk to any guy that's in the media and ask him, if I see like a Tarico at a production meeting, I'll ask him, I'll grab him in the hallway and just pick his brain a little bit. And every single guy, no matter who it is, they always tell me that they said, you got to work at this like you work at football. Like, this is what you do. You think, if you're watching from the outside, you think you could just step in the booth and just call a game. Like, I love football. I've been watching football my whole life. Of course I can do it. And then, trust me, I've done a few like mock games where I've been watching on TV with a legit play-by-play guy and headphones and a producer. Guess what? While you're making those, you have those 7-8 seconds to give your intelligent thought out. You have a producer in your ear the whole time as well. Yes. So you're speaking, but you can't hear yourself speak. So that's something that people will never see either. Yeah. And I think they always say that's always the underlying thing. There's no secret. You have to work at it and you have to prepare. And the good guys like you guys just make it look so easy. And I think we do. I take that for granted. I think everybody takes for granted how great you guys are and the guys that make it look good. But then when you see a guy that has not prepared and he is not doing great, it's like instant, like, oh no, it's almost hard to watch.
Yeah. And what that is I think guys, and it's not just football, it can be NBA, it can be MLB, guys that have great careers sometimes think that alone makes them an authority figure on a topic. And what I've found, and maybe it's because I wasn't a superstar player, I feel like 1992 was a long time ago. 2002 was a long time ago. In this sport, 2010 was a long time ago. So I make a point of going to visit Nick Saban this summer, this spring. I'll go visit Nick and talk defense. I'll go up to Columbus and I'll see Urban and Tom Herman, and I'll talk no huddle. What are the new wrinkles? I used to go see Rich Rodriguez when he was in West Virginia. But when I get with these coaches, I'm talking about what's the cutting edge. What are we expecting now? What's the answer? What's your answer to no huddle? What's your answer to this? And then, so I'm trying to stay one step ahead. And when you do that every year, you really find yourself almost as a glorified GA, because you're picking the minds of the great coaches in the country every single year. I mean, I remember Pete Carroll when he was at USC. Every year we'd be out there shooting commercials, and I'd find an hour or two to go over to his office in Heritage Hall, and I'd have him on the grease board, and he was nice enough to do it. And we'd be going over zone pressure and this elephant linebacker that Cushing used to play, and what Cushing could do that nobody else could do. And I'm sitting there just like a sponge, writing this stuff down and absorbing all of this. And I've done this for years. And if I didn't do that, I would be that guy that's like, hey, I was a great player. I know football. I can. And it, like you're saying, it shows, versus the guy that's trying to constantly learn. And I mean, 2012, if you go by just how offenses and defenses are running 12 to 14, you're already missing it. So whoever's telling you that is dead on. It's just, I think that's why analysts love the game, love the analysis position so much, is because it is an extension of what we used to do. And if you prepare the right way, it's just like it, except you don't go out there and play the game.
I think you have to be, do you think that you have to be a fan first to be able to do that?
I think the fan in me is the fan of the sport, the fan of the storyline. I always get a kick out of people that think ESPN, for example, this is another kind of conspiracy theory that I hear a lot. They call ESPN ES like an SEC, like an ESPN spin, like we're the voice of the SEC.
Yeah.
And what I want to just scream from the mountaintops is, so you're ABC and ESPN. Your number one conference that you want to do well is the Big Ten. The next best conference would be like the Pac-12 or the Big 12, because ABC has relationships with these conferences. ESPN has a relationship with the SEC, but ABC does not. CBS carries all the big SEC games.
Yeah.
So think about it like a stock market, the blue chip stocks. For us, when I say us, ABC and ESPN, the blue chip stocks would be Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Texas, Oklahoma, USC. These are teams that you would want if you think we have a rooting interest. Those are the teams that you want to be as high as they can possibly be, because it's going to drive eyeballs to the television, and we are the network that carries all of those games. So if there's a conspiracy, it would be towards that. Yet people think ESPN. The reality is, you watch college football. Who plays the best football right now in college football? The SEC. I mean, it's just, whether we like it or not, that's the truth. So I think the fan in me is more about the sport, and the storylines, not so much about the teams. But I don't know, when I'm getting ready to call a game, I almost feel like I'm as excited as you are because of all the work I've done. I never sit down during the game. I mean, I'm standing up. I mean, imagine me standing up calling a game. And here's Brent. I think he's 75 years old. And if something big happens, I'm throwing elbows, flippers at him, and I'm hitting him in the kidneys as he's calling the game.
It's a good thing they got him out of there, man. You'd have killed him. Kept going. Watch out.
He's high-fiving me, and I'm elbowing him. I mean, we have so much fun, and it probably goes back to your point. You do have to be if you're not a fan of the game, you're probably not going to enjoy it.
That's what I was trying to reference. Yeah, you have to be with listening to how much preparation you do. I'm thinking you sound like a huge fan of football, the sport, and you would have to be to be able to go through all that work and preparation, what you're doing. If you weren't a fan, that would be torture. That'd be terrible. Like if I had to go, I mean, I don't want to, I'm sure it'll offend whatever sport I'm going to come up with, but if I had to go, I don't know anything about motocross. I'm not a huge fan of motocross, but if I was calling some motocross and I had to go talk to people like that and prepare like that, like if somehow they threw me on to do something, to broadcast some form of a motocross event, I would want to be prepared. And maybe early on it'd be fun and be something new, but I think after a while I'm not that passionate about it. Therefore, it would be work to me. I think it'd be absolute work when what you're doing seems like you're working your ass off, but it's a lot of fun as well.
I think I would take it even a step further. If I had to do what I do for the NFL, I don't know if I could do it. I mean, I like the NFL, but I don't love the NFL. Like I like Sunday night NFL football or Monday night NFL football because I like the energy of those games. And then I like week 13, week 14, and beyond. But like a 1 o'clock game, 1 o'clock Eastern game on Fox between the Chiefs and the Raiders or whatever, I don't love it. Now, meanwhile, you could put Miami of Ohio and Bowling Green on a Tuesday night, and I would love it. And for that matter, you could put Centerville against Elder on live from the pit, and I would be all over that. But you put on the again, just a random NFL game. So that just tells me I like the NFL, but I'm not crazy about it. And that probably has a lot to do with your point about the work ethic and going after it. Now, what's funny about the NFL, I watch guys that I have relationships with, not just at Ohio State, but other schools, guys that I'm pulling for, guys I hope do well. That to me has become my NFL, not fantasy football, just seeing guys make plays, watching you make a play on a goal line stand or an interception. I get a kick out of that more than, oh, wow, that team won. I just, maybe it's because I'm a Bengals fan. The season's over by week 4 usually.
Not anymore, man. They're back on the map.
They're getting better.
We went down there, man. We went to Cincinnati. I was watching some of the film today, actually, and I'm sitting here watching. I'm like, how did we lose this game? We got beat. They're really, believe me, the Bengals are good, man. They're on their way back. They already are back, but yeah, we went through a weird back and forth game with them, but
I remember. Yeah.
I'm gonna start to wrap it up to let you get out of here and get back to your family. But I wanted to ask you who would be you already referenced Brent Musburger, but who would be your favorite, like I'll say top 3 broadcasters of all time?
It depends if you're talking about a play-by-play guy or an analyst.
Okay, who's your favorite, your top 2 play-by-play guys? Any sport.
Of all time, I would probably say Al Michaels. I just love his voice, and I love his style. And I love, we just talked about Mike Tirico and Chris and Brent. I mean, if I eliminated those guys, probably Pat Summerall, again, just because of going back to being a kid. And I was a big Cowboys fan as a kid. And it seemed like every Sunday at 4:00, Pat Summerall and John Madden would come on with a big Cowboys-Redskins game or whatever it might be. Those are probably Keith Jackson. I mean, if you're going to include college football, I loved Keith Jackson. We'll always think about some of his sayings and the tone and the way he delivered them. So he would be up there too.
What about analyst?
My favorite analyst of all time would be, I like Doug Collins, who's on the NBA.
He's great. Yeah, you're right.
I really enjoy him. I would say Chris Collinsworth and Troy Aikman both do a really nice job in the NFL. I enjoy Todd Blackledge, who works in college. Those are probably the guys. I loved Dick Vermeil when he was on. I used to love listening to him when I was younger. Those are probably the main guys.
All right, yeah, I'm sorry. I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot, too. If you have a colleague that would happen to see this thing, get mad at you for not mentioning him. So I apologize for you in advance. I completely put you on the spot.
No, it's all good.
I'm going to throw a guy out that I have recently – well, not recently. I've always known his voice and his work. But how about Doc Emmerich doing hockey?
Yeah.
That guy
Man.
I can't. So I've recently become a hockey fan this past year, I would say, and I've always had so much respect for those guys. A play-by-play. Can there be a harder play-by-play than hockey?
Yeah, to me that guy does a ridiculously good job, and I think I've been a Jackets fan since they built the arena. So I mean, I've been suffering with them for a long time, and this year was magical. And I think he called Game 1 against the Penguins, which was so cool to see him call a game. He's got an energy about him, and he doesn't miss anything. And for that sport, like you said, I mean,
it's unbelievable.
Guys are jumping over the boards. I mean, the puck, I don't know where the puck is, and he doesn't miss a thing.
And then how about their names? He pronounces their names right. They're from all corners of the earth. I mean, I'll sit there and watch a hockey game, and I love watching the game, and I'll just listen to him or any guy that does play-by-play for hockey. And I was sit there and I was like, there's no way if I practiced for 40 years that I could even get through a game. I could even get through one period of hockey. It just blows my mind what those guys can do. And Doc Emmerich, the great thing I love about him, you're right. He seems like he never misses. Uses 5,000 different terms for the word pass, that's documented online, and he still will throw in little funny jabs back and forth with his color analyst throughout the whole game, which is kind of rare, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, the names, I think if you're a hockey guy, you probably kind of get used to that as a play-by-play guy. I think the energy that you're talking about, the way he has fun with his analyst, I think that's huge, is not just being like, I'm a play-by-play guy in this lane, you're an analyst in that lane, you stay in your lane, I'll stay in my lane. I don't think that's the way you do a game. And I think the more you interact, the more real you sound and the more comfortable you happen to sound to the viewer at home on his couch. And you're right, he's been really good for hockey, since he's been calling the bigger games and the bigger series. He's been outstanding. And I don't remember who his analyst is, but I think they both together do a really good job.
They're great, and I know I just like I said, I watch in awe. My final question really would be, I didn't get to it earlier when you were talking. I've heard I'm not going to name any names, but I've heard a play-by-play guy. He's done college, pro, he's done everything, and he had a former player come do color for him, and I was talking to the former player, and he was saying, he's like, first rule, the color guy or the play-by-play guy was like an old, crusty vet, and so he had this new young punk coming with him, And and the guy walked in, he started to ask him, like, what do you want to do here? And it was trying to, like, riff with him before the game, the color guy. And the play-by-play guy all he said to him, he looked over and he said, don't step on my voice. And that was it. Well, and he's like, boom. Then they went to air, like the cold opening like you guys do. And he's like,
wow.
Oh, gosh. So the guy said he was, like, shaking the whole game. He said it was brutal.
Who was the analyst?
I can't say that either. I wish I could.
Oh my gosh!
I can't say that.
And he's just trying to.
It'll give it away. It'll give it away. I'm sorry. I'll talk later. I'm sure people are pissed. I'll tell you after I record. People are mad because I listen to podcasts and things, and people will talk and be like, "Oh," they'll stop themselves and be like, "We'll talk about it later after we stop." So that's what we're gonna do here in a second. But
that's a great way to make you feel comfortable, right? Gosh. Basically, stay out of my way.
Have you ever run into that?
Thankfully, no. I as a game analyst, as a listener when I'm watching at home, I can't stand when the analyst talks in or over top of the play-by-play guy. So I think I innately and subconsciously I stay out of the way. I try to get out of the way as fast as I can because I know I need to be done before the ball snaps. That's where I try to have a second or two before the ball snaps. But I've never, Brent or Chris or Mike, nobody's ever come up to me and said, stay off the voice. Like I wouldn't. In game day, we're constantly interrupting each other and yelling at each other anyway, so that wouldn't be a problem. But when you call a game, you got to be respectful of the play-by-play guy. He's kind of the quarterback. He's the guy that's got to tell the person at home what's going on.
That would seem to me why that relationship would be so important. You'd have to get along with that guy and enjoy being around that person. Both, like, that's got to be something that I would imagine. I mean, you've seen it. We've seen it play out actually on the air a few times when people you can see they don't get along.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it's no different than being in a conversation where there's 5 or 6 people. You can pick it up pretty quickly to me when you're at home watching a game. And you could tell the guys that have great rapport and guys that are just kind of putting in the work. Like Aikman and Buck, they seem like they're going to go, hang out and have a dinner after the game. Like they seem like they genuinely enjoy each other. Maybe I'm wrong, but they come across that way,
They're great. I think they're amazing. Like I said, I talked to Joe Buck on here a little while ago. Man, I said, you're definitely underappreciated for what you do, doing multiple sports. He said he might be getting into golf eventually. I mean, just what those guys do, man.
He's another guy you would have to throw in to the next kind of wave of play-by-play icons. He'll be that next guy, I think, because he's been very fortunate to be a part of Fox when they've had the World Series and the Super Bowl, and so his face and his voice are synonymous with big games and big events. And to be fair, he's hit it out of the park when he's been put in those situations. So your generation, my generation, we're growing up where if you say, hey, okay, you don't have Keith Jackson, you don't have Brent Musburger, Al Michaels is still there. Who's that next guy? I think a lot of people would probably say Joe Buck.
I mentioned that to him, and I said, I was just watching TV before I talked to him, and I'm thinking, I see like a highlight of a World Series game and his voice, and you don't even have to see the TV, and you just hear his voice, and people that don't even know who Joe Buck is, they know that voice.
Absolutely.
And so that it's the same thing with you doing the biggest games. People grow up with you, it's true. Like they grow up hearing your voice, seeing you. And so has a huge influence on them. But real quickly, the one thing I wanted to get to, I wanted to ask you how awkward your Eminem interview was in the box. I'm sure everybody's asked you about it. I didn't see it live, man. I had to go watch it on the computer afterwards.
AJ, he was the coolest guy when he came into the booth. He walked in and he was a little bit spooked by the fact that it was live TV. And he said hello to me and said hello to Brent. And, we were a minute or two away from coming back live. And he had his headphones on. And, we were just talking. And everything was fine. And then there was like our producer in our ears like, okay, 5 seconds, And he goes, hey, man. He goes, where's the camera? And I pointed to our little camera that's in our booth. It's very, very small little camera up at the top. And he saw it. He goes, "Okay, man, thanks." And then they're like, and Brent started, "Hey, welcome back, and look who's here." And then he went into that character. And I'm kind of looking at him like, I was just talking to him a second ago.
You were laughing, man. It was amazing.
I was like, what is he doing? Yeah. I'm kind of like elbowing him like, okay, what? And then he finally, he got out of character and he started doing the interview. But I tell you what, man, the guy is brilliant. If you think about it, he'd been a little bit off, and kind of hidden in the weeds for the last year or two, didn't have an album, was kind of quiet. And out of nowhere, all of a sudden, he's on ABC Saturday Night Football, and he did the most unusual, bizarre interview. And next thing you know, on Monday, that's Saturday night, on Monday, he's on The Tonight Show, Rick Riley, Bill O'Reilly, all these guys had him on, and they were making fun of him. But if you think about it, what's he trying to do? He's trying to sell records. And think about how brilliant that was to do that on that forum. And Jimmy Fallon, they're all teasing about him, making fun of him, and all he's doing is saying, "Thank you, get the message out." But yeah, he wasn't high, he wasn't stoned. It was all just theater and him having fun. It was, but it put me in a really like, all righty.
I thought you handled it great, and my favorite part was watching Musburger deal with it. That was the best part. Man. Just like looking around with his, that booming voice, and I was like, "This is amazing." It's like watching my grandpa doing this. He would just freak out. Like Musburger handled it well. He was a true pro.
He did. I think he called him Mathers. Like Marsh, he goes, "Mathers, I'll tell you, it's been great to see."
You're right, Mathers. I'm sure he gets that a lot.
He goes, "Mathers, thanks for stopping by."
Oh, it would have been only better if he would have called him Slim Shady or. Oh man. Yeah, it was so good, man. That was that was nice. That's an iconic moment I think you guys have had. And and Musburger's last year for that to happen too, on with you. Beautiful. I'll remember.
It was good.
That's going to live on, and the best part is it's going to live on the internet forever.
Oh, that one, that one, and I was at the top of a stadium in Oklahoma when an earthquake hit, and my facial expression was kind of like shock, like, did that just happen? Yeah, those are the two things that'll never go away, it seems like.
That's right. You'll be long gone, and your great-great-great-grandkids say, "Oh, you want to see it? There he is, old Grandpa Herbstreit." That's right, man. Good. That's what. Hey, there's a lot worse things to be out there.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right, well, just wanted to thank you so much, man. It was just a huge honor for you to come on here and speak with me and try to pick your brain a little bit. You're one of the one of the greatest broadcasters ever, and you're still such a young dude, man. So I'm looking forward to watching more games, watching you call more games, see what you do in the future. I know you just signed a 10-year deal, whatever you say. Who knows? You're going to be there forever doing the biggest games in college football, and I'm really excited about that. I think everybody is. So thank you for doing what you do and preparing like you do, and being a Centerville Elk as well as an Ohio State Buckeye, just to piss those people off that we were talking so much earlier about. So I really appreciate you coming on, man. Thank you very much.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you having me. And I'll tell you, what you're doing right here is probably the best reps that you can get. Because when you get done playing, I don't know how many more years you want to play, but when you get done playing, you're never necessarily going to be put in a role, unless you choose to, where you're actually interviewing somebody else. You're going to be analyzing film and becoming an analyst, or you might sit at the desk with the PTI guys or whatever it might be. But you're going to be more of, "Hey, AJ, this just happened. Donald Sterling just said these crazy things. What do you make of this?" And you're going to have an opinion. So you'll be more, in my opinion, as we look back at this, 4 years, 5 years, whenever it is down the road, you'll be put in a position to have strong opinions based on your background, based on your life experiences, based on your research. What's your opinion on Donald Sterling? And you're going to have a very informed opinion that some people agree with, some people will not agree with. But that's doing what you're doing right now. I can't even begin to tell you how much that's going to get you more comfortable in front of the camera. So by the time you get to wherever you're going to go, hopefully ESPN, you'll just be sitting there and talking, and that's when you get to a point where you're looking at a camera and you're just talking and you're not looking away from it, or you're just looking at the camera like we're talking right now. And the more you do this, it's going to get you closer and closer to being able to achieve that. So whatever I can do, man, I've told you that, whatever I can do to help you out. I've been where you are, as far as wanting to do it, but not knowing where it might lead. And I relied on guys like Eddie George and Joey Galloway when I was young to help me with being the interviewee. And, whatever I can do to help, let me know, man. I'm more than happy to help in any way.
Well, thank you. Yes, you've been super open and helpful for the longest time, I think, since I've known you, and especially over the last couple of years when I told you I was interested in the broadcasting type world. I don't know exactly what avenue yet, but I started this just because I like to talk to interesting people that I think have a cool message, and have done great things. So that's basically where it's at now, and it's true. I don't really, someone like you, I think it's good for you, someone to ask you some questions. You're always the one asking other people questions,
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's a good thing, and I wish you well. I hope you get to. I want to see it I want to see all these guys that you have. You have to let me know when it gets up.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be up. We'll let you know. Don't worry. It's gonna add some little frills in there for you. Some editing tricks. We'll see what happens.
Okay. Keep the dog going out of the background.
Yeah, I might keep the puppy, the 75-pound puppy. I'll keep him in there.
Exactly.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right, man. Good talking to you.
Thank you for joining in. Please visit thehawkcast.com, where you can discover the next guest, get a little more information about why this exists, watch past episodes, or link over to iTunes. And tell some friends too, so we can all hear more great stories together.